If every episode is built around whatever happened this week, your podcast becomes stressful to produce, harder for compliance to approve, harder for you to sustain, and much easier to abandon.
Welcome to Podcasting for Financial Professionals. I'm Virginia Elder, founder of Podcast Abundance, where we help you use podcasting to market your business, to increase your authority, to get more eyes on your practice, and to capture leads for your business. If you're an investment advisor, tax strategist, business finance sleuth, or wealth management professional who wants your podcast to actually support growth, not just create content, you're in the right place. I made the podcast conversion blueprint just for you. It walks you through exactly how to turn your listeners into clients using a simple framework you can apply right away. The link is in the show notes. Here we go into today's episode.
Here's what comes up often when I'm helping financial professionals plan podcast content. We'll start mapping out a thoughtful quarter of episodes, usually around client questions, seasonal planning issues, search-friendly topics, the kind of evergreen education that will really benefit their viewers. And then they start to panic. But what if something happens in the market? What if a new tax law passes? What if there's breaking news that we need to respond to? I like that you're focused on relevance and the immediacy required in some situations, but you are not to make your entire content strategy reactive. Markets move, legislation changes, headlines get crazy, and clients get anxious. And if your work touches people's money, businesses, retirement, taxes, estate planning, or any level of financial security, there will absolutely be moments when a timely response is useful. But if every episode is built around whatever happened this week, your podcast becomes stressful to produce, harder for compliance to approve, harder for you to sustain, and much easier to abandon because you end up chasing headlines time after time instead of building a strategic body of work that you know your prospects need to hear. Planned content protects your sanity. And then we sprinkle in some rapid response content to keep you relevant. You do need both, but they do not carry equal weight. The best version of this is what I would call a flash episode, a short, focused, calming update that can be inserted into your regular publishing schedule when something external genuinely requires your statement. This could be a sudden market drop, a major legislative change, a tax deadline shift, a regulatory update, a client data breach, in the news, or basically any headline that is creating confusion or fear in your client base. Remember, you are not starting a podcast to become a news reporter. Your clients and prospects do not need you to repeat everything they already heard on NPR this morning. The goal is to become a steady, calming, reasonable voice when the headlines feel dramatic everywhere else. Now, a flash episode is not a full production masterpiece like your typical episodes. There's no guest, there's probably only one or two talking points, and it's not something you're going to design a promotional campaign around. This is just a quick hit to get the word out fast. In fact, the most valuable flash episode might only be 5 minutes long. All you've got to do is acknowledge what's happening in the world, explain what it does and doesn't mean, remind them of the bigger picture, and then tell them what action, if any, they should take. This kind of episode can reduce public panic, calm your client's anxiety, and prevent the flood of repetitive inbound calls that often happen when people don't know how the news is affecting their money. Because when you don't speak, people are going to look for interpretation somewhere else, right? They might turn to cable news, who knows what station, TikTok, Reddit, a coworker, or the loudest person in their group chat. And by the time they finally reach out to you, they may already be worked up, misinformed, or convinced that they need to make a move immediately. Now, remember, I managed financial podcasts through COVID, so I saw and heard plenty of this. A timely podcast episode gives you a way to say, here's what we're watching, here's what it means for you, here's what it does not mean, and here's how we look at this at our firm. And here's how we recommend you take action. This framework is incredibly useful for your listeners. But again, this only works well when it sits inside a larger planned content strategy. If you already have your next several episodes mapped out, a rapid response episode doesn't derail your show. It just gets inserted. Maybe we push the planned episode back by a week. Maybe you release the flash episode as like a bonus on Friday when you don't typically publish. And you might even send it to clients by email and use it as a calming resource before they start having individual conversations. So there's a lot of ways that you could use a flash episode. Your planned content gives you structure, and then the flash episode gives you some flexibility. That's the balance we're going here. Now, without planned content, every timely news-based episode becomes a scramble. You're digging up a headline, deciding what to say, and then trying to fast-track production and compliance so that it can get published while the headlines are still fresh. Kind of a hamster wheel. I mean, that would make you crazy. But with planned content, the show already has a rhythm. The flash episode becomes an intentional insert, not a full reinvention of your content calendar. Now, for anyone in a compliance-heavy environment, this is where your process is really going to matter most. A rapid response or flash podcast episode does not mean reckless response podcasting, okay? You still have to respect your firm's rules, your review process, the boundaries around advice, performance claims, predictions, all that stuff. In fact, if you know that you might want to release timely episodes, like for these headline situations, the smartest thing you can do now is prepare a rapid response framework before you even need it. That might include a pre-approved intro structure, a pre-recorded, pre-mixed disclaimer with music already, a standard outline, and a list of phrases you already know will be approved by compliance. For example, your flash episode might follow a simple structure. Here's what happened. Here's why people are reacting. Here's what we are watching at our firm. Here's what this may mean in context. Here's what we don't recommend doing impulsively. And here's when to reach out to our team. So 6 points, you take the headline, you answer those 6 questions. That's your episode. That structure is calm, clear, and repeatable. It also keeps you from wandering into prediction mode. You are not trying to prove you know exactly what the market will do. You are helping people interpret what is happening through a disciplined planning lens. Really helpful. For a market drop, a flash episode might sound something like this. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Today, we're seeing heightened market volatility, and I know headlines like this feel unsettling. In this short update, I want to explain what we're watching, why short-term movement does not automatically change a long-term plan, and what questions are worth asking before you make a decision. That's not fear-based. It's not reactive. It's steady. For a tax law change, okay, let's take a shot at that one. A new tax bill has created understandable questions, especially for business owners and retirees. I want to walk through what appears to be changing, what still needs clarification, and why we recommend reviewing the details before making any major planning decisions. Again, we're going for calm, helpful, and measured. We're not trying to add to the panic in the market. For an advisor, CPA, bookkeeper, insurance professional, estate planning attorney, any of these financial service professions, this is where podcasting becomes more than content. It becomes a client communication tool and gives your voice a place to work at scale. So instead of answering the same anxious question 30 times a week because of something that happened on Monday, you can record a short episode once, send it to the people who need reassurance, and you're good. It doesn't replace personal advice or individual conversations, but it can make those conversations more productive because you've already given people a baseline of context. This is also one of the reasons I love podcasting as part of a trust building system with your prospects, referrals, and your clients. They get to hear how you respond under pressure. Not just what you know, but the way that you think, the way you look at a headline, and the way you backtrack and pull it apart and understand what's going on. They're looking for the person who creates clarity over panic. They're looking to see if you chase headlines or if you interpret events through a thoughtful planning process. Do you sound rushed, alarmed, or do you sound like the type of person they would want beside them during a high-stakes decision? These are the things that matter to your clients. Now, I also want to address the temptation to turn every current event into content. Please don't do that. A flash episode should be reserved for moments when your audience is likely to feel confusion, urgency, concern, or decision pressure. This isn't something we do every month or even every quarter if we can help it. If whatever's in the headlines this week does not affect your ideal client's decisions, planning, behavior, or emotional state, then you don't need to interrupt their lives by bringing it up. That filter protects your credibility and your energy. Now, a thoughtful rapid response strategy is not about being constantly available and into the news, knowing everything that's going on. It's about knowing when your people need leadership. So here's the simple decision filter I would use. First, are your clients or prospects likely to be worried, confused, or asking about this? This being whatever the headline is that you're considering. Second, does the event connect directly to the work you help them do? Third, can you provide context without making predictions or overstepping compliance boundaries? Fourth, Would a short episode reduce repetitive questions or help people make better decisions? And fifth, can you quickly produce it without disrupting your entire content system? If the answer is yes to these 5 questions, cool, record a flash episode. If the answer is no, let your planned content continue doing its job. From a production standpoint, this can be very simple. You keep your outline ready, the one that I gave you earlier within this episode. It's also in the show notes. Make sure your pre-recorded disclaimer, your intro, your outro, all of the basics for your show are handy. Know whether the episode will be audio, video first, or both. Know who reviews it, like compliance. Know your production timeline. And then finally decide whether it's supposed to replace an episode and bump everything, or if it's just going to be dropped day of and like a bonus episode. If you work with a production team like mine, they should be able to smoothly insert this flash episode into your content calendar. No big deal. That's exactly where production support really matters. You, as an advisor, CPA, attorney, business owner, should not be panicking over file exports, episode descriptions, YouTube thumbnails, podcast settings, or whatever, all of the things that required to push something live quickly. Your job is to bring the perspective. My production team's job is to help your perspective move quickly and cleanly into the world. That is the difference between rapid response content feeling like a burden versus it becoming a strategic advantage for your business. When done well, a flash episode can become one of the most trust-building pieces of content you release all year. Not because it's the most polished, no, it would be very rushed, but because it arrives when people feel lost, confused, or worried, or basically at the moments when they most need your voice. Well done flash episodes show that you're paying attention for them, that you understand their anxiety, and that you have a process for responding quickly. Plus, it shows that your video podcast is not just some marketing activity, that your show is part of your leadership. So, if you are planning a quarter of content and you're worried that a topic map or some content pillars will make you seem less relevant or less responsive, think about it this way. Your pre-planned content is not a cage. It is the structure that gives you room to respond well. When your evergreen episodes are mapped out, you've created stability within your content plan for you as the host and for your production team. Your show has enough stability to absorb a timely insert when the moment calls for it. And when that timely insert is short, focused, and grounded in your actual expertise, it can serve your clients, calm your audience, and strengthen your reputation without turning every week into an emergency. That's the real strategy. Build the planned content. Use the commonly asked questions and your content pillars to build out your episode plan. Then prepare the rapid response framework. When you're publishing educational episodes, building your library, and you just have a few flash episodes sprinkled in throughout the year, that's how your podcast becomes the way your clients experience steadiness, clarity, and leadership before they ever reach for that phone.
Thanks so much for listening to Podcasting for Financial Professionals. If you want your show to do more than just educate, If you wanted to generate leads and bring in clients consistently for the long haul, make sure you're using the Podcast Conversion Blueprint. This free download helps you structure your podcast to attract new listeners, refine your messaging to nurture them, and capture those listeners when they're ready as your next best clients. And of course, practicing what I preach when you sign up for your free download of the Podcast Conversion Blueprint, you're going to land on my email list. Hit reply to any newsletter because I'd love to learn about your show or about your ideas for a show. I'll point you toward your next best step, whether that be light support like an audit of your show or becoming a member of the Academy. Or maybe you need full service strategy and accountability like what I do inside the Podcast Conversion Lab. Thanks again for listening to Podcasting for Financial Professionals. If you enjoyed today's episode, stick around for the next few episodes because each one incrementally helps you improve your podcast.